100,000 deployments line. Thanks for sharing in our wins. Thanks to the insiders and other community members for spinning up deployment guides, spreading the word. Guys, keep on doing that. Keep deploying, keep spreading the word. Excited to see what we can do together in October. With that, we also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that some of our community members are affected by the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. And guys, please know we're all thinking of you. All right, before Greg takes it away for updates, here are some things for you guys to check out during the week. Akash Insider, Rodri's Insider Spotlight blog post went live over the weekend. Check it out at akash.network/blog. While you're there, check out more articles put together for you guys by our very own Zach Horn. Also, check out Akash's LinkedIn for even more content. Look out for Overclock's September recap this coming Monday on LinkedIn. Also on LinkedIn, we've announced a special Akash Weekly Spaces with Alani Bankhead and Lourdes Miranda on the ever-shifting regulatory environment in Web3. This will be a conversation you guys won't want to miss. Check it out. And for those of you who have an idea for a project on Akash, join our grant program. For details, check out our YouTube video on Akash Accelerator and visit akash.network/Akash-Accelerator. With that, let's get started with today's spaces. Greg will kick us off with a monthly wrap-up and updates. After updates, we'll give you guys a full introduction and welcome to our guests, Adam Bozanich, CTO here at Overclock Labs, and Anil Murty, Head of Product here at Overclock Labs. During our guest segment, we'll be asking Adam and Anil about Overclock Console announced at Messari Mainnet last week, as well as some other product updates. We'll then wrap up with an AMA with Greg and our guests. All right, we'll get into that just after updates, but for right now, let's hand it off to the man of the hour and CEO of Overclock Labs, Greg Osuri. Take it away, Greg.
Thank you so much, Nadia. It's great to be doing this community calls. I mean, this is what our fourth month of weekly updates, and absolutely love, you know, giving this weekly update and talking to you folks and answering any questions. So here we go. So like last week, it's been quite a lot of travel for us. We were all in different conferences. Messari Mainnet being the big one. We had about 10 people there, Overclock Labs team. Two of us spoke. Me, I spoke on a panel, and our head of product, Anil, spoke and gave a keynote about Akash Network, and he demonstrated the product that we've been talking about, the console. For those of you that didn't have a chance to see what console is, it's essentially an amazing way to deploy an Akash. Now, it's very complementary to products like CloudMoss and Speron and Pradar and whatnot, but it takes a little different approach. First off, it's a web client, and it takes a package manager approach. So we don't optimize for all applications like what CloudMoss does. CloudMoss, essentially, you can deploy any app that's listed on Awesome Akash. Whereas this takes a little workflow approach where you have different topologies for a certain, application that's listed. You have different user experience altogether. Essentially, we are experimenting. We, as Overclock Labs team, is starting to experiment what a user experience on Akash should look like, taking a little different approach than the rest of them. Either way, all these efforts is going to strengthen our ecosystem and gives you more options as an Akash user. So it's a very thriving ecosystem. I'm super excited for console. We'll have lots of conversations about console in this call. For those of you that want to catch on the demo, please go check out Anil's talk in Messari. And Anil happens to be an amazing storyteller as well. So go check out, the demo. I think the talks are up pretty much now. Give me 1 second. My dog is not letting me have a decent conversation here. And
Greg's dog hadn't made an appearance in a while. Glad to see he's back.
Glad to be back, but this guy is he's adamant on his toy. Awesome. But generally speaking, like Masari was a great reminder, right? A lot of us are, building in our offices, in our houses, whatnot. Going to Masari is a stark reminder as to how popular and how many people really know about Akash. And I probably met about 150 people or so at the conference and realized maybe four or five people didn't know what Akash was. It's incredible to see the kind of penetration Akash as a brand has, right? And it's obvious, like when you see things like the Coinbase listing Akash as the number one decentralized cloud, recognizing that Akash is one of the platforms that really proved that you can have a peer-to-peer infrastructure protocol and have deliver the high performance and a kind of user experience in a non-custodial manner, right? So this is just not us telling, right? So we have enormous like everybody I talk to either have used Akash or have heard of Akash or plan to use Akash, but we do have the penetration, and that was kind of visible in when Hetzner banned the crypto. So first thing that was in people's mind was Akash. This is exactly what we wanted to be. Right now we have such a solid brand. We stuck to our values, and the tons of teams we meet are doing amazing things about Akash. Over the next few months, you're going to start seeing quite a lot of these integrations roll out, along with the efforts that our ecosystem leads are doing to improve and extend the kind of options that you have available to deploy on Akash, right? The protocol clients ecosystem. Some of them are on this call as well. So we have just this optionality improvements in terms of different ways to deploy on Akash, different use cases each of these protocols clients are optimizing for, and these amazing new use cases like the DoD use case we're talking about. And we're also starting to see quite a little spillover into other use cases where companies are starting to realize that, look, cloud is extremely expensive, right? Anil gave a talk last week that he really highlighted the actual cost model where over 50%, on average, 50% of all the money you pay to online services, right? Like Netflix or like Uber Eats, the service fees to Uber Eats, or these online services that you and I use every day. 50% of that, margins really go to a cloud provider, right? So cloud is slowly starting to take a very, very strong position in our daily lives, right? So, and it's not decreasing, it's really increasing. And when you have this hyper, um, you know, a growing part of our lives, which is not slowing down. And you see, on the other hand, you have these record profits, companies like Amazon's and Google's and Microsoft's are starting to register, right? So it's not hard to see how you end up having a permanent invisible tax for everything you do online being paid to one of these large providers, right? So that's the situation. People are starting to realize, companies are starting to realize that, hey, they can take back some of those margins and use and maybe pass it down to consumers or use for other things. But cloud is not the solution. So people are starting to realize that having their own data center, even though it may be expensive in the short term, but actually it is great in the long term. And that's really where Akash comes into play, right? If you're a company like Intuit or at a Walmart or anyone that realizes cloud is no longer the best cost optimized option, bringing back your data center is really where the future belongs. Akash can help you offset some of the costs of running your data center. So maybe instead of needing 100 servers, a company can have like 80 or 70 servers and offload some of that unused capacity on the Akash network, earn tokens, and use that tokens back when they want to scale, right? So we're starting to see quite a lot of recognition and experimentation. And with the kind of penetration that we have going on, you can only see in the next couple of years the kind of use cases Akash is going to unlock. And I don't know how many of you were in the one of the podcasts I did with Twitter Spaces I did with Coinage Media, Zach Gussman, who's a former Yahoo News reporter yesterday. Um, and and there were quite a few folks from our Amazons and Googles on the spaces, and they tweeted about it, right? So it's like starting to see the conversations are actually opening up, right? And the conversation was like, well, now Amazon Zach was highlighting the fact that, hey, what happens if an Amazon or a Google or a Microsoft want to be part of Akash? I think that's the best use case, right? And Akash has always been a the goal of Akash is to bring people to the table, create a multi-cloud standard, right? Yes, I think that's very likely the future where you're going to have the big clouds and the small clouds and everybody at the same table, leveling the playing field and giving the consumer the ultimate benefit, which is true cost of the cloud, and that is operated in a sovereign and open way, right? That's the vision we're all like optimizing for, and we're starting to see some of those seeds come to fruition. So, with that, I'd love to welcome my co-founder, CTO of Overclock Labs, Adam Bozanich, and our head of product, Anil Murty, to give you more on what we're working with console. And this is something we've been working on for a while, and really excited that we were able to show you last week.
Awesome. That's right. Our first guest today is Adam Bozanich, CTO here at Overclock Labs. Adam is co founder and CTO, like I just mentioned, where he drives the technology behind the world's first decentralized marketplace for cloud compute. Prior to Akash, he led software development at Symantec, One Kings Lane, and Marketron. Before that, he worked as an engineer and developer for music monetization platform Topspin, which was acquired by Apple in 2014 following an initial acquisition by Beats. Adam holds a U.S. patent for the invention of network protocol fuzzing, a security analysis methodology that dynamically tests a system's resilience to protocol abuse. Welcome, Adam. How are you today?
Hey, thanks so much, Nadia. Great to be here. I'm doing well. I'm a bit tired. This is a fantastic conference here at Cosmoverse. It's been great to see the community and the projects here. It's just such an inspiring event. So I'm a bit tired from that, but otherwise I'm doing well. Really happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Our second guest today is Overclock Labs' very own head of product, Anil Murty. Anil is an engineer turned product manager who has a passion for building products that serve deeply technical users. He has worked on products ranging from consumer hardware, enterprise hardware, software, and SaaS, and most recently, cloud native developer and observability tooling. Anil is based in the beautiful city of Portland, Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest region of the US. Welcome, Anil. How are you?
I'm doing really well, Nadia. Thanks so much for having me on here. As Greg said, super exciting week last week at Mainnet, and then just watching all the presentations from our team and other teams at Cosmoverse this week. Super excited about what's coming up.
So last week, Anil gave us the first ever look at Overclock console at Messari Mainnet. Yesterday, Adam and Ali, our DevRel lead, held a workshop here at Cosmoverse where attendees were the first outside the company to ever use console. The workshop was packed, guys. Adam, you said this is something that was in the original vision when Akash was founded, and I know you're really excited about it. Adam, can you tell us what's exciting about console and who is it for?
Yeah, absolutely. The part about being part of the original vision is that what we were originally going for was like your options when you're deploying an application. There's like you could either go with something that's really simple to use and really expensive and really slow, or something that's like really, really difficult to use. It's like moderately performant and is moderately, decently priced, except for ends up being really, really sneakily priced, as you get bigger. And so we originally wanted to fix this. We wanted something that's easy to use, highly performant, and is inexpensive. And so we've been working really hard, obviously, on the platform side of things, making things run quickly, making things inexpensive. And this is like, we're finally like rounding it out with something that's really easy for people to use. So that's why it's so exciting to me personally. It's been a long time coming. In terms of the users of it, we're I think Anil can speak to this better. He's been amazing at designing the product side, but we want to make it easy to target people that we know will be excited to use the platform. It's like there's like push button workflows to launch validators, nodes, RPC nodes, all kinds of things like that people in this audience will be really interested to use.
Anil, I have a question for you, but before I get to that, is there anything you'd like to add in? Adam was saying that you might have a little bit more on console in the user experience and a little bit more about it. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, happy to talk a little bit about console. Yeah, what Adam said is pretty much spot on, which is while there are other ways of deploying things onto Akash today, everybody takes a little bit of a different, slightly different opinionated version and sort of opinions about how things should be deployed. And Greg touched on this as well. Is there's the market for Akash is so big, and the types of applications that you can deploy on Akash are so wide and varied that there is plenty of room for innovation at the layer above Akash network, right? And so our approach with console has been, rather than trying to boil the ocean and build something for every single type of application out there, we're squarely focused, at least on the near term, we're squarely focused on making sure we provide the best experience and the best tools for validators within the Cosmos ecosystem to be able to spin up nodes. So regardless of whether it's a full validator node, an RPC node, a Sentry node, whatever that might be, make that experience really, really easy. And we think this is really important, not just because there is a market need and a need to be served there, but also because it's key to ensuring that all the Cosmos chains and then blockchains in general are super decentralized going forward. Now, once we get through this mission of trying to build the best experience for validators on the Cosmos chains, we'll be looking at things like, other chains like Solana and Ethereum and everybody out there. And this will align really well with some of the other things we'll talk about today in terms of, things that are going on within the Cosmos ecosystem as well.
Thanks, Anil. So, Anil, I had said that the next question I had was for you. So, Anil, Mainnet 3 added features requested by our community, such as persistent storage, fractional UAKT, and authorized spend. Something we want to talk about today is our next big upgrade, Mainnet 4. What can you share with us today about Mainnet 4, and when can we expect it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, yeah, we're super excited for Mainnet 4. And conveniently, I'll give you basically 4 features. So it's easy to remember it's Mainnet 4, and there's going to be 4 big features coming out. So the very first one on this list is going to be something that we have been calling IP leases. So if there are folks on this call that have been on past Twitter Spaces with Greg, I think I was on one of them as well. We have talked about IP leases every now and then. But for folks that are new, I just kind of want to revisit a little bit and talk about what exactly this is. So IP leases essentially is, for the tenants, which are basically users deploying on Akash, for them to be able to request a publicly routable IP address for the services that they deploy, right? So today, if you're a user of Akash and you deploy a service, what you get is an HTTP endpoint connected to your service, and then the actual port is a random port that is assigned by Kubernetes, right? And so what we want to do with IP leases is give people the option of requesting a dedicated IP address, a dedicated IPv4 address. And what that will allow the users of Akash to do then is be able to assign a specific port to it, not some random port. And this will let users be able to do, certain services or instantiate certain services that they're not able to instantiate today. So some examples of this might be, people trying to spin up Solana nodes, people trying to spin up VPN servers that require ports within the standard IP port range, that sort of thing. Now, on the flip side of this, what IP leases will enable is it'll enable providers to bring more value by utilizing their unused IP address space, right? So if there are providers today that have unallocated or unused IP addresses, they can now, once IP leases is out, they can start monetizing that unused IP space and leasing them out to tenants, right? So this is going to be a pretty big feature, both on the tenant side as well as on the provider side. And it fits really well with our overall strategy to become sort of the de facto platform for hosting all sorts of node infrastructure, regardless of which type of chain it is, Cosmos or others. So that's number one, IP leases. The second thing that we'll be putting out as part of Mainnet 4 is something that we're calling the provider services split. So, for those that are familiar with Akash, essentially, we obviously have providers on one side of our marketplace. And from a technical perspective, the way things work is that um, typically a provider is composed of many services. And, you know, our past implementation of providers' services was typically a monolithic implementation. And while this worked pretty well, and it's something that works really well and it scales pretty well so far, as we look towards the future, we want to make sure that this remains scalable and it also remains something that we can quickly iterate on going forward in terms of features, right? And so, one of the big efforts that our team has been undertaking is a phased approach to transition the provider services from a monolithic implementation to a microservices implementation. And so the first couple of phases of that is something that will be included in the mainnet upgrade that we do coming up in mainnet 4. The next two things are related to IBC3 and interchain accounts. And so we have been working on code changes to support and be part of Cosmos's interchain accounts and being able to be part of that ecosystem. And so there's going to be code changes associated with those as well. And so these four things are going to be things that we're looking to target as far as Mainnet 4 goes. And I think, Adam, you might even have more to add on IBC or ICA.
Yeah, I mean, so we've been having discussions with a lot of projects that are like, hey, can we integrate with ICA in a way that cross chain? So interchain accounts and IBCV3 allows one chain to send transactions to another chain. So you can imagine if you're doing a smart contract on Agoric or on Juno, you can control your deployment on Akash. So this enables things like, in the future, having DAOs, self-manage their own deployments by this cross-chain mechanism. And there's, it's as we all know, this ICA and IBCV3 it's all new. There's a lot to explore, and I think it's going to allow for some really interesting use cases that we haven't even really thought of yet. So it's great to get this out there and get it in people's hands.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So, Adam, we've been working hard towards making it more plausible for validators to run nodes on Akash. Can you give us the latest update here and touch on the how and the why for validators?
Yeah, absolutely. Running nodes in general has been, possible for a while. For those of you that have been with us for a long time, one of our first testnets, the testnet before we launched the platform, we actually hosted a testnet on top of our testnet on Akash. That thing being said, the tooling for it was subpar. It was really difficult to use. And also for the larger chains, we just couldn't support it because we didn't have things like persistent storage. And so what we've been focusing on lately is making it the user experience for running nodes and validators really easy. One part of this, especially for validators, running nodes is one thing, RPC nodes, what have you, Sentry nodes and things like that. But running validators, I in particular have been very cautious about suggesting that people run validators on the platform because it's one of those things where there's a lot of secret key material involved, and it's just something that, like, if you're a responsible validator, it's something you really want to think a lot about security. And so our team has been, to address that, our team's been working on tooling to make it such that you can keep your key material elsewhere. There's this protocol or functionality in nodes called TMKMS, Key Management System. And we've made it really easy for people to leverage that so that they can self-host the keys while running their validator node on Akash. So this really opens up, it makes it such that you can run your validator at a really low cost while maintaining a fair amount of security.
Awesome. That's great. Anil, let's go back to IP leases for a moment here. I know it's a work in progress, but is there anything else you can add about the IP leases front? And IP leases has been something where the community's been involved in helping out with its development. How has that been like working with the insiders on IP leases?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So, I talked obviously about the core value proposition of IP leases to tenants and providers, but just talking in terms of, trying to get this out there, we released sort of a alpha version of IP leases about, let's say, a little over a month ago, maybe longer, to the Akash Insiders. So, for those people not familiar with Akash Insiders, they're a group of people that have been very active in our community and now are part of this team that basically helps us out with testing of new features, communicating certain things to the broader community, that sort of thing. And so the Akash Insiders got an early sneak preview of the IP leasing functionality about a month or so ago. You may have also seen tweets from some of these folks talking about how awesome it has been to deploy IP leases and sort of spin up services that give you a dedicated IP. So that was great. They spent about a week or two testing out the feature, and we got a decent fair number of bugs that we had not seen internally. So we appreciate all the testing that the insiders did for us. And so we took those bugs back to our dev team. Our dev team has worked on all those bugs, fixed them, and so right now we're at a point where we're trying to make sure that the provider service is split and the IP leases code as we put this out, we don't mess things up. And so our plan right now is we're going through some internal testing this week, and we're hoping to target opening this up back to the IP, also sorry, to the Akash Insiders next week, and we'll go through a round of testing again with the insiders, and hopefully, if there aren't any blocker issues found from that, we should be all set for being able to put this out as part of the mainnet 4 upgrade.
Awesome. Adam, well, we often ask our guests to reflect on their journey and where they're headed. So but Greg and Anil, you guys can definitely jump in on this one as well. Can you take us back to where Akash started and then talk a little bit more about where we're going from where we are today?
Oh boy, that's a long one. Yeah, I spoke to it. Yeah, I spoke to it a little bit earlier in this discussion, which is that originally we were part of it is that we felt that the internet had kind of lost its way. Okay, especially with respect to how applications are hosted on the network on the internet. It was supposed to be this decentralized set of nodes that could withstand nuclear blasts and things like that. It's independently owned. And it had been turning into this thing where if US West 1 goes down on AWS, no apps worked anymore, right? So there's clearly a huge amount of centralization happening on the internet. And that's one of the things we wanted to address. The other one is what I was mentioning earlier, where deploying applications, your choices were between something that's really easy to use, but really, really expensive and really had really poor performance, and something that was really expensive with respect to the level of effort required to use it. And then the benefits you got from it were, so-so, they weren't great. And so we've been hard at work for a long time attacking both of those problems. The decentralization piece, of course, we've opened up this there's a huge amount of supply out there that's just untapped because there's so much friction in getting to it. So we've unlocked that with our marketplace, and now we have our console getting in place now to really leverage it. So I'm just super excited about where we're at now, because these things that we had been trying to solve for so long, we've been solving piece by piece, but we're really seeing the whole picture now.
Awesome. Anything to add, Greg and Neil, maybe on where we're headed, or anything else you guys would like to add before we move on?
Yeah, so like Adam mentioned, right? We are doing and Akash is one of the critical missing parts of Web3 in general is just this lack of traditional engagement infrastructure, we call it, right? In Web2, you know why a user, kind of dropped your usage because you have some metrics. In Web3, it's with no control means you also have no idea on some of the traditional tooling that you are used to in developing Web 2. So a big part of our effort for console is to understand the user journey, understand where there are friction points in terms of adoption, right? So we have an idea just by talking to users, but now we can have statistically significant data that we can actually work upon, right? So a big part of pushing our console is to remove those friction points. And in order to do that, we need to start measuring our user activity, understanding the journey, understanding the points of interaction where there might be confusion or there might be just reluctance on the user part, and solve for problems that we know are obvious, but we want to see statistically significant data to back our thesis. So I'm really excited over the next, what console is going to bring. We're going to be very aggressive in terms of developer marketing with console. Now we finally have a product that we can, throw a web ad or throw a blog post and have a click to deploy mechanism directly from the blog post. So things of that nature, right? So I think you're going to start noticing much higher user activity, right? On Akash, and this user activity is just not madness. This is measured methodically, this is quantified, and this is and we'll be iterating quite a lot on based on this high quality data. So I'm really excited for all the experimentation. Next few years we're it's very obvious now we're in a bear market, but I think it's going to be a lot worse. I mean, that's the general consensus, and it's a prolonged market. So we're with console, I think we can be hunkered down and hyper focus on users and nothing else. And when the light finally comes, you're going to see a lot of these efforts come to fruition. So I'm super excited. I'm super excited for the next few months and years to come.
Awesome. With that, then let's open it up to our AMA with questions for Greg and our guests, Adam and Anil. If you have a question, go ahead and request to speak, and we'll bring you up. Greg, did you get any questions over on Twitter?
I did not.
All right. All right. So
I was wondering if a lot of our audience is going to be tuning into Cosmoverse today because the conference is still going on.
Well, we are actually competing with our very own Adam Wozni, who's going to be on stage. So this is not a bad thing. We'll be able to rush over there as
Nice.
we're competing with ourselves here. But yeah, we did have a great workshop yesterday with Ali Merchant here at Cosmoverse. We had Adam Bozanich's keynote, of course, at Cosmoverse. And overall, we've had a great time. We had a happy hour with the insiders as well. Got to meet a few in person, which was awesome. And now we have Adam Wozni on the stage in about maybe like 10 minutes or so, 10-15 minutes. We'll try to see if we can get those links up for you on Twitter. Our social media manager, however, has rushed off with his wife to go have their baby. So we'll do our best to get those links up for you guys so you can tune in. Yeah, so if there are no questions, we could wrap up. Greg, the only thing that comes to mind is just how our ecosystem works together, how console fits in, how does it all complement each other? We've got great partners with Prater, with CloudMost, but now we've also got console. Do you want to touch on that a little bit? I know that's probably a question that comes up a lot.
Yeah. So like I said, Akash is a very generic platform, right? So there are millions of ways you can use Akash. I mean, maybe not millions, but thousands of ways you can use Akash, right? So there are definitely like different use cases and different approaches to those use cases. So and we imagine the protocol client ecosystem is going to be It's essentially an effort to verticalize Akash, right? What that means is, because Akash is so generic, in order for Akash to be usable, you need to verticalize and you need to um, customize the experience for the use case you're targeting. Right? It's very hard to develop a generic sort of like platform that solves all the problems, but doesn't really solve any problem in a good way, right? So the goal of a console is to verticalize experiences to solve for certain use cases that we're targeting, right? And we imagine a similar approach is actually not imagine, it's actually in reality, similar approach is being used by CloudMoss and Sperons and the Predators of the world. Like, so, and we're going to see a lot more integrations that are targeting deployments, right? So some of them are hyper-targeted in web workloads. Some of them are hyper-targeted to running nodes and RPCs like console, and some of them like CloudMoss that are hyper-targeted to run, awesome Akash, right? So the goal is to develop hyper-customized experiences so we can target few use cases and do them really well. So right now, if you look at console, it's really looking in the direction of being able to run RPC nodes and full nodes, right? Easily from the web because we believe a base layer in Web3 is under assault, right? And we need to solve that. So um, it's very important for us to deliver an experience for Cosmos ecosystem to begin with, and the rest of the crypto in general, to be able to deploy RPC nodes rapidly, right? We all know the kind of censorship attacks that are on crypto right now. We all know the kind of centralization inefficiencies that are starting to serve. We know what's happening with alchemies and the infurious of the world. There's really no purely decentralized RPC infrastructure, right? And we even the ones that we thought are decentralized were ended up disappointing us. So we believe strongly that we need a super easy to use, fully self-sovereign, fully open RPC infrastructure and node infrastructure. So we're targeting our console to be optimized for those use cases, right? Whereas CloudMoss is optimized for running an SDL file. Like if you notice, I don't know if you had paid attention to the demo, but there's almost no sort of like interaction with the SDL file, except for the fact where you can go change a few things. It really doesn't start from the SDL file. Console's experience really starts from like, hey, we're trying to deploy an RPC server. Let's select the topologies and deploy, right? Whereas CloudMoss obviously is hyper SDL file centric, where you can pick hundreds of applications, be it blogging, be it you know, no, there's certain RPC applications, but be it, wide variety of applications all listed on our awesome Akash and really begins with the SDL centric experience, right? So I mean, I think this thriving ecosystem of different ways to deploy Akash is ultimately going to benefit the Akash, user, and again, our goal, again, I said, is to be able to measure user activity and optimize the workforce accordingly, right? So yeah, we are complementary to the ecosystem. Me as an Akash community member and a contributor, you're going to see me use both CloudMoss as well as Console and several others, depending on the use case that I'm targeting, right? So it's that's how we are positioned, right? So again, console is not open source and not we don't we it's there are no plans to open source, right? CloudMoss is fully open source. The goal of the console is to create super frictionless experience for running RPCs and whatnot. And other tools have different approaches. So, and if we look at Speran is optimizing to run web applications. I mean, you'll be able to do like building things like building a node a Next.js application without needing a Docker file, stuff like that, right? So each of these protocol clients are optimized for different use cases. On Speran, you can pay using your Magic tokens, and they're really targeting the Indian ecosystem, and their experience is going to be optimized for that ecosystem. But you can see how the kind of all in all, right? All these efforts are ultimately going to increase deployment, Akash. So that's the real beauty of what we're doing with Console.
Awesome. Mr. Bean, we saw you request to speak. Go ahead with your question. Welcome to Spaces today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for just me. So I have a question. So what do you need for your project? Can you share little information for all investor to keep your token in the long run?
So what's unique about Akash is that Akash is the only viable decentralized cloud hosting platform or network, right? What that means is today the options to host your cloud native applications are very limited. You have Amazon's, Google's, Microsoft of the world. Collectively, they represent hundreds of $1 billion. It is on track to become $1 trillion market in a very short period in the next 5 years or so. So, and every half of every dollar you and I pay for online services goes to these cloud service providers. Akash is the first attempt at creating an open cloud where the cost is 95% cheaper. What that means is our bills, our Netflix bills, are going to be, almost a half, right, of what we can pay. Our cloud bills are going to be almost half, right? So the Akash is a very critical part of a future where most of our lives live on the cloud. So that's what Akash does. And why is it attractive for investor? Again, none of this is investment advice. Well, if you're looking at $1 trillion market, right, at 100% market penetration, uh, which I thought was not a possibility, but it's starting to look like it's a possibility, especially when you have the big three players start using Akash, right? I think you're going to see quite a lot of the activity happening based on Coinage podcast I did yesterday, sorry. So it's very likely that in a future, Akash would have 100% cloud penetration, which is a $1 trillion market, right? So, and you can do the math. I don't even want to get to there. And Akash has a limited supply in tokens. There are only 389 million tokens that'll ever be in existence on Akash. So why is it important? I'm not talking from investment standpoint, but Akash, the AKT token is the primary medium exchange, and it is the token that secures the network. So it's inherently important for the network to have the AKT token to have value. The value of the AKT token gives Akash blockchain security. So the higher value, the higher security. So if you're looking to secure $1 trillion of potentially $1 trillion market, I mean, the token needs to be added value to be able to do that, right? So to answer your question, yes, security to AKT gives security to the ecosystem, and it's $1 trillion ecosystem, and the penetration is happening slowly but surely. And by the time you know it, there's a real good possibility Akash could have 100% market share. So that's why I think it makes a viable instrument. Again, now this is financial advice. I'm no financial advisor. It's hyper risk. Talk to whoever you need to talk to for your risk assessment. But to answer your question, I think that's where the value of AKT token comes from.
Thanks, Greg. Awesome. We had another listener request to speak. Nova, I think they may have dropped off. We'll just give a second here for any other questions that I may have missed. All right. Well, Greg, do you have anything to add before I close us out and take us through our reminders for the coming week?
No, I don't. I think we had a pretty good coverage here.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much to Greg, Adam, and Anil for joining us on Spaces today. And a huge thank you to all of you for joining today or listening to this later. Also, look out for Overclock's September recap this coming Monday on LinkedIn. Also on LinkedIn, we've announced a special Akash Weekly Spaces with Alani Bankhead and Lourdes Miranda on the ever-shifting regulatory environment in Web3. Guys, this will be a conversation you will not want to miss. Make sure you look out for that and tune in. If you miss Greg, Adam Bozanich, Adam Wozni, or Ali Merchant's talks or workshops at Messari Mainnet or Cosmoverse, also Anil Murty's talk, keep an eye out on Twitter where social media manager Joe Dang or someone filling in for him since he's having a baby will be posting as soon as replays are ready. Also, join us next Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific for our next Akash Weekly Spaces with Greg. Tap that set reminder button as soon as we post it. Be sure to try Akash for yourself. To deploy on Akash, check out our documentation at docs.akash.network for a bit more support during your deployment. Guys, join our Discord group. Scott Carruthers, Director of Technical Support, our insiders, and other wonderful members of the community are going to be there. They're going to help you out. You can also watch Alani Kuya walk you through your first deployment over on YouTube. We also have great YouTube content over there. Check it out. Check out akash.network/community and find out how you can spread the word about Akash and help this project grow by becoming an Akash insider. Thank you so much for joining today's event. Thanks again to Greg, Adam, and Anil. And a special thank you to Ali for the workshop yesterday. I know you weren't in on the spaces, but I just want to let you guys know he did an awesome job and we're looking forward to more workshops from him. So with that, thanks for spending time with us. See you next Wednesday with Greg at 8 a.m. Pacific.
Thank you so much.